Hey everybody, this is Rodalus, and welcome back to our Tails tutorial, where I will be continuing our model of Tails. So what we're going to do today is Tails' body, his arms, and his hands. Very important to focus on those things, because Tails is a character that everyone knows for his tails, but it's also important that he has hands and feet and everything like that. I feel like it would seriously detract from the character if he didn't. So we're going to go ahead and throw those in today, as an afterthought. Also, this session I was in was a full session where I did pretty much his whole body, but it was too long, so I cut it in half, and so the next video will be uploaded a little bit later. So here we go, starting off with Tails. We started with a sphere, and we cut it in half, sort of like what we did with the head. And now we're going to form Tails' body, which is an interesting shape. It's kind of spherical, it's kind of round, a little rotund, not exactly fat. Sort of, if I were to give a definition or description of Tails' body, gourd-shaped. Yes, we're making ourselves a little Miles Gourd Prower trademark. The thing is, we're going to focus on how he is shaped. As you can see, I'm drawing with a little grease pencil for myself as a reference as to like kind of what I'm going for when I look at him in that particular view. So what we're going to do here is we're going to sort of bring in his sides a little bit. Not too much. Don't want him to be too thin. Sort of bring in the top, bring down the bottom, and bring in the middle just a little bit to kind of make him a... I said gourd. He's kind of bean. He's a bean shape. So that's kind of what we were going for. Now his chest fur is very interesting. It's either a texture with a transparency or it's a particle effect. It's very kind of interesting. You can see little individual hairs. We're not doing that today because it just ain't that serious. What we're going to go ahead and do is a simple extrude of the geometry. You'll see what I mean in just a moment. As I start on that particular process. So here we go, back with the bean, and we're going to. I like to peek sometimes to sort of like get a little eyeball. Like I said, freehand is the way I do things. But first things first, we're going to draw a little bit of a line where we're going to have the texture, because what you saw there on the front of Tails was kind of a texture going into a particle effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a texture going into an extrusion that'll make somewhat the same effect. So I made a seam. I marked a seam where his belly texture will be, and then from there we're going to sort of delineate where we're going to actually put his texture. I'll be doing this in another program, but I'm just sort of like giving myself a visual clue, a visual idea of where to start putting things already. So that's his chest fur, and we're going to start the extrusions where we're going to make the actual the little spikes, not spikes, tufts, sort of like his whiskers up in the top. So we're going to kind of just make little extrusions, cut a little loop cut there, and, poof it out. Fluff it out, because Tails is a fluffy character. I think that's overall what we are intending to accomplish with this. So we make sure that those extrusions are within the little place where we drew the seams, so that when I actually paint this, when I'm making the paint, you'll see as I export the UV layout, those little spikes are within that, so they also get that color of whiteness, and also his breastbone where it kind of dips in towards the center. All of that's kind of in that space, so I can draw that texture. So we're going to do a little more shaping here, making his chest fur stick out. He's got 3 little spikes. I started with 2, and then, we'll come up with that third one very soon. But this is the kind of thing I'm talking about when it comes to detailing. I will confess to you guys, I would much rather make something in Blender than draw a texture. I like to shape things more than like any other portion of the process. I'm not a good animator yet, so I focus on one thing, and that one thing is primarily just modeling. I like the modeling. I like that feeling, that challenge, and I will spend hours just doing stuff like this. So which is why I had to speed up the video again. I slowed it down in some places so I can explain a little bit, but right here and right now, we're just we're consulting probably some notes or something, which is why we're not moving. Any case, I really do enjoy the process of extruding. We should be getting ready. There we go. There we go. I don't know. I took a nap or something. Anyway, back here, we're going to go and start putting up that third spike. There it is. There's the third spike. Everyone was waiting. I'm glad. Weren't you glad you were patient? Anyway, so that's that, right? And we're just going to go ahead and here and clean up any kind of places where the seams are overlapping. And also, we're just going to make sure that it's shaped right. So we're going to cut some more, use the knife tool, cut some more lines in there. And really get control over the way the little chest tufts are spaced. All right. So we're going to do some more shaping on the back to bring that in, make sure his back's not too broad or too thick or too wide or anything like that. Pull it in properly. Trying to get that sort of youthful sidekick fluffy boy. I don't know exactly what they were going for when they designed Tails. I like it overall, but it's hard to describe why I like it. So here we go. Like I said, more shaping, more fiddling around with the those spaces. Next, we're going to actually start working on his arms. So we're going to cut open a hole soon. And then, but first we're actually going to make some cuts here to give Tails' arms some more dimension. Instead of having just 4 sides, it will have, I think, functionally 8. Or something close to it, like 2, 4, 6, 8, about that. And we're going to just start pulling that out. We're going to make his shoulder. It's a small shoulder. It's not really all that defined, but we do want to have a place for his shoulder to bend. We're always thinking about the way this will be rigged. It's super important to start off with your models already having a good idea as to how you're going to rig it. And whenever you rig a character with bones, right, you're going to be using the little bones that are provided in Blender. You want to make sure that your character is built with joints so that he bends convincingly along those joints. So the shoulder's an important place. We don't want too much of his body to move when we moved his arms up and down. And we want to make sure that in the length of his arm, there is an elbow joint, so that bends very convincingly. So we made a cylinder here. The cylinder has the same number of sides as the extrusion and hole that we made for his shoulder, so that when it comes time, we will link those up, line those up, so that he will have a complete sort of arm and shoulder joint. Characters like Sonic the Hedgehog, characters like Tails, don't really have really defined, like I said, musculature. So it's important to make sure that even if it's not, Tails doesn't have biceps or anything like that. I mean, depending on what sort of fan art you like watching, but still, it's going to be very, very, very minuscule, very thin joints, very small, small pieces. So now we're going to go ahead and hit the Alt M actual button there, and we're going to start connecting those vertices that make up the cylinder and the sphere that I made his body out of. And this process takes a little bit of time, so I sped it up a little bit. In a moment, I'm going to go ahead and go into object mode, and then I'm going to smooth out the cylinder so it looks like the rest of his body. But right now we're cutting more loop cuts. Yeah, there we go. We're going to smooth it. We cut more loop cuts just to serve that whole that joint narrative I was talking about. Like, he needs to have a place that will convincingly bend for his arm. And now we're just pulling things in so it doesn't look like it's sticking out too much. We're going to shrink his arm in on the y-axis because it was a little too flat and it was kind of weird. So this is mostly just shaping. We're just shaping Tails' arm. We're shaping his elbow joint, and now we're going to do some more shaping of his body, because I'm really never, like I said this before, I'm never really satisfied with things before I'm completely done. Like, before I just have to drop it and say, all right, we're done. That's all the editing we're going to do on this model. Just leave it alone. I always want to do more. So I'm bringing his arms in. They're a little bit shorter because Tails' arms are not long. Tails' body is not big. He is a diminutive character. It makes sense because he's like 8 years old. He's young. So the only part that's big on him is his hands, which evident. We are coming up on right now. We are actually making Tails' hands right now. I'm making them out of spheres. This is a new kind of technique for me. Usually I make them out of squares. And I'm going to confide in you guys real quick. I'm going to let you know just a little bit something about myself. You don't tell anybody, okay? Just between you and me. All right, just between you and all of you guys out there, me and you. I don't like making hands. They're not my favorite part of any model. They're the things I dread most when I actually have to sit down and think about how they are shaped. I have done a lot of hands. That being said, I've made a few different hands, but I kind of also cheated. When I made my first model, Sally, that was the first time I did hands. I'm like, never again. And then after that, I made like a base set of hands, and all of my characters, true enough, have the same hands, except for a few of them. They all have the same basic hand structure, because it's hard for me sometimes to just sort of get my head wrapped around this. But I think I did a pretty good job this time. What I'm doing now is I'm just sort of like doing the finger layout, how long they're going to be, that kind of stuff. I'm probably going to exceed the mark here when it comes to those fingers, but it's, I think, important to just make sure that you've got a good idea of where you're going when you start making structures that are more complicated like this. Look at me saying that hands are complicated structure. A lot of people who work in Blender are like, man, that's not hard. That's the easiest part. Well, it's not for me, unfortunately. I'm not a hands guy. Okay, so we're going to start on the thumb here, which we're going to start with a cylinder that will have 4 sides initially, and I might make some loop cuts to make sure that all fits together. And so here we go. We're about to get this going. We're going to make some extrusions. We're going to rotate the little ring segments that I make, sort of to fit in that along that line. I'm not trying to mirror it exactly, just sort of giving myself an idea of how the thumb bends. I did a lot of looking at my own hands. I don't know if it was really useful. I mean, obviously my hands and his hands are a bit different. Obviously, he wears gloves all the time. I don't, and it's just not the same shape overall, but I believe it'll pay off in the end here. All that hand staring I was doing. So we're going to make the end of the thumb a little bit bigger, a little bit rounder. We're going to come in there, and we're going to move some pieces around. That's what we're going to do. We're going to move a lot of shaping, because I just wasn't satisfied with this. It's going to do... Okay, yeah, we're rotating the thumb down, because the thumb of your hand actually does not stick out straight. A lot of my models started off with the hand sticking out straight out. That's not realistic. That's not how your thumb works. It goes down in its natural... If you just sort of hold your hand out right now, you just sort of look at it, your thumb actually hangs. And that's something I kind of had to learn. I looked at some videos, and I'm going to have to look at like 1,000 more before I really get the hang of thumbs. Unfortunately, Tails' thumbs are not going to be the best thumbs I ever modeled. But one day, some character I model will eventually have the best thumbs ever done, by Rotalus at least. And we're just one step closer to that day, all right? I'm just saying, like, one day we will be there. We'll get there, all right? And I hope you see... I hope you're there to see it. Right? It'll be my proudest achievement. Good thumbs. It'll be the name of the video, in fact. Good thumbs. Good thumbs by Rotalus. So, we're just doing this. We're just going in here and making sure there's enough shapes, because it's super important, just like with the arms, to have enough joints, because when the thumb is there, it's like 3 bones. There needs to be at least 3 places where that's going to be bending. Now, I might actually, in fact, have to go back in here and fix it, but I think I'm getting close to leaving it alone, hopefully, so we can move on, because these thumbs, man, let me tell you, they're not the most important thing in the world. So, next things next, we're looking at how we're going to get, yeah, okay, I wasn't happy with the length of the thumb. I'm going to delete some vertices there. I'm going to actually bring that in here. You thought we were done with the thumbs. We weren't done with the thumbs. The thumbs weren't done. The thumb, there's only one. Thankfully, all of this, let me just remind you, is in mirror mode, because I would have to do everything twice if it wasn't, which is the reason I would put things in mirror mode, simply, just to be completely honest. So scaling up Tails' arm a little bit, scaling him down again. I look really indecisive sometimes when I work on this, but there's a reason for all of this, I swear. So yeah, we're just shaping that thumb. Just working on that, working the thumb. Just working on that thumb. Great. Good. We're happy? All right. So now we're just going to squeeze in Tails' body a little bit because I then realized that I wasn't really happy with how wide Tails is. I was like, he's too wide. He's not fat. I said this before and I'll say it again. Tails ain't fat. He's just round. It's the only way I can really describe him. So now we're going to add another reference image, something that's a little more detailed than the ones I was using before. It's an image that has two Tails on it, so I'm just going through my files here, picking up Tails, putting it in the background there, and that's not what I want. I'm actually going to move the two Tails image. There we go. And we're going to scale it up a little bit so that it's easier to see. Increase the opacity, scale up the image, apply it to all of the views, I believe, or at least the front. And then scale her up. There we go. All right, so now Tails is in between Tails. It's Tailsception right now. All right, so next thing we're going to do here is we're going to start focusing on Tails' fingers, which is why I did this. I wanted to kind of see how his fingers go. All right, so we're going in. You're gonna just leave that thumb alone. Let me tell you what, that thumb is not that important. I really probably should have cut that out, honestly. I mean, I feel like I've gone in on this thumb, but maybe it'll express to you exactly what I said before. I don't feel certain around hands. Maybe it's because I haven't done enough hands, but that thumb, man, I was super worried about it. You'll see I was less worried about all the other fingers, but that's just because I made the fingers in a similar way to how I made Tails' little hair spikes, where I just sort of went in there and I duplicated the model. So we're going in there finally, and we're going to use some extrusions here. We're going to open up those. We're going to just delete those faces. Those faces I got, by the way, by hitting Shift Control B, and on vertices that were on the front part of the knuckle. I did cut a few things out there, but yeah, the front part of the knuckle. And now I'm gonna bring those together just to line them up, and then I made those holes there. And now I'm just gonna do some more sizing, more shaping to make sure that his hand is consistently thick throughout, because it's very important that your character has a hand that makes sense. So here we go. We're starting with the pointer finger. We're scaling it down, and we're just sort of lining it up with the with where it's going to be connecting. We're going to use that whole Alt-M maneuver again to bring them together. As soon as I rotate this thing, there you go. That's a baby. And we're just going to start shaping it. We're just going to start working out how to line up the finger with the rest of the hand. So automatically you can see me making joints, because just like the thumb, just like the arms and everything earlier, there needs to be joints for when I add the skeleton, because the skeleton is going to bend, and there need to be joints so that it doesn't bend in a very strange manner. If you can imagine, if you only had two joints, well, okay, if you can imagine if you had like a line, right, and you put a little cut through it, right, and you wanted it to bend along that little cut, then that's fine, but you know, a lot of that material is going to actually like run into itself. So you want to put maybe 3 or 4 cuts in there so it bends in a more circular fashion. I think you understand this. I think I might be over explaining it, but yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. I'm drawing in where I want the joints of the finger to be, the major joints, at the knuckle, at the middle part, and at the little tiny part. I don't actually know what that's called. I'm gonna have to look it up so I can sound more educated. Any case, the finger, we're shaping it so it can look more like Tails' finger, which big cartoon fingers. Sonic the Hedgehog character fingers, Mickey Mouse fingers, honestly, Disney character fingers. They're all like this. They're big, gloved, fat fingers. I believe it harkens back to minstrel shows and that kind of stuff. People would dress up, and they would have the big gloves. And then in cartoons, because everything was in black and white, right? It was easy to show off hands if the hands were a solid color, if they were white and the body was a black color. In any case, that has nothing to do with this. I just found it an interesting thing. I looked it up at one time. All right, so Now, we're bending the finger because when I make the skeleton's already going to have some certain degree of rotation in its bones that will necessitate having the finger already be kind of lined up to that. So when I parent the model to the finger bones, it will be already pre-bent. It will be already ready to what's the word? Articulate? I'm not sure. In any case, it'll be ready to bend in that direction. So that's what I'm doing with this sort of shaping. Like your hand, when you look at it, and if you're not flexing any of your muscles, all of your fingers are bent already. They're like just already pointing downward. Your thumb's pointing down. All of your fingers are just going down already. So that's how the Blender human meta rig is shaped. So I'm modeling this so that it'll be ready for the human meta rig. So I don't have to do anything special with the meta rig, because that often throws it off, messes up the calculations that it does. I don't know. Anyway, I've had trouble with it in the past when I tried to make the fingers straight. So I'm not going to do that. Now you can see I'm duplicating the fingers, very much like I did with the hair pieces in the first video. And I am rotating them a little bit so that they are splayed in a natural fashion. I'm making sure that the pointer and the middle finger are of different lengths, as the pointer, middle, and ring finger are all different lengths. Middle's longest, pointer and ring finger are around the same length, pointer just a little bit longer. Actually, wait, whose hand am I looking at? The ring finger's longer. But anyway, depending on whichever mutation you happen to have, your mileage may vary, but here's the deal. Making sure that the hand at least mirrors a realistic, let's not say realistic, reasonable hand. I may come back in here to make it a little bit wider, but this is kind of what I was going for with Tails' hand. Now I'm going to add some definition, some detail to the palm. Not too much, but just something to show that, hey, he's got a hand, he's got a, that thumb arch and that other arch that's on your pinky. Like these are hand details. We're getting into hand detailing, all right? This is some hardcore modeling stuff, all right? Let me just tell you what we're into here on the Roadless channel. So that is what I'm doing. That is what we're about. And so I believe we're coming up on the end of his hand. I certainly hope we are. This consumed a lot of time. Like the original video here was about 3 hours and 50 minutes. This is most of that because I cut out a lot of it. Oh, look, I'm doing the thumb again. I feel like the thumb might be too short, which means in the video that I do next, I'm probably going to have to make it long again, because I don't know if this is too short or not. It looks fine, but then I'm looking at this in like orthogonal view, which makes everything look like it's far away, not close, which is helpful when I'm modeling, but sometimes it throws off my perspective a bit. So I'm probably gonna, now that's perspective. See, that's, everything's all really close to your face, so I don't know. You tell me. Is my thumb too long? Is the thumb too long? Seriously. Leave something in the comments. Say, hey man, the thumb's too long. Fix it. Or the thumb is too short. Fix the thumb. Make the thumb better. Make the thumb good. Stop it with the thumb. Really, we're done with the thumb. You can move on. No one cares. Just let me know how you feel about the thumb. The thumb specifically. Tell me. Now, the deal here is that I never truly feel like I'm done with anything, apparently, because we are here to focus on the next part of Tails' hand, which is going to be the cuffs, those little cuffs that he has on his gloves, because his hand is going to be his glove. Like, we're not going to make a separate object to be his hand. That's all it is. So we're just going to make a cylinder here, and we're going to pull it in on its sides, pull it in the middle there, make it look kind of like a little cuff there, widen it out, put some more loop cuts in there, add a little definition, a little detail, and then we're going to start making it look like he wears it, actually, which means we move certain sides in and out and around. Give it some life, give it some fluff. Like, Tails didn't just buy these cuffs, he's been wearing them for a few years, or months, I don't know, however long foxes live. And we're going to make the little tiny little black bracelet that sometimes appears underneath his cuff. I don't know if this is a modern Tails thing or it is a classic Tails look, but I've noticed he has belts in places, and it's kind of interesting. But yeah, he's got little belts that go inside of his cuffs, and I don't know, maybe he's secretly a Final Fantasy character. Maybe he's secretly designed by Tetsuya Nomura, and he just got away. He got to Sega somehow. Any case, that is Tails' cuffs. I bring them in a little bit more so like his arms aren't too long. And I'm going to just go around and mess with the hands again because I just can't let it go. I just cannot stop myself. I see a pair of hands. I'm like, no, more. More this. What is that? Nothing. It's just... I'm a little bit obsessive when it comes to these details that I'm not used to doing a lot. Like, I think that's probably what it is. Just unfamiliarity with it, and I'll get better one day. Any case, I believe we are coming up on that point where we start working on Tails' legs and his tails. That will not be covered in this video. This video will have more to do with the modeling of Tails' arms and body, like I said before. So stay tuned for all of that, where we're going to be in our next video working on Tails' legs, his tails, and his feet. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you did or did not in the comments. I very much appreciate feedback. And I'll see you next time. I've been Roadless, and you've been wonderful. Goodbye. Roadless, the 2 is silent.